They were part of one of TV's most iconic and unexpected hits, Kung Fu, 1972 to 1975, a show that blended martial arts, Western grit, and Eastern philosophy. But behind the calm wisdom of Kwai Chang Caine and the dusty frontier towns were real people facing battles of their own. Over the years, several cast members met tragic and untimely ends, their lives marked by addiction, scandal, mental illness, and sudden death. While the show promoted peace and balance, the actors behind the characters often struggled with chaos and heartbreak. In this video, we take a closer look at the stars of Kung Fu who have tragically passed away and uncover the dark, often overlooked stories behind their final days. David Keredine was born on December 8, 1936, and played Kwai Chang Caine in Kung Fu from 1972, taking on the role at age 36. His character, calm, introspective, and guided by Eastern philosophy, became an unlikely pop culture icon. But Keredine himself was anything but peaceful. Behind the calm exterior was a man haunted by demons. Born into the prestigious but deeply fractured Keredine acting dynasty, David's early life was riddled with neglect, abandonment, and a desperate search for identity. His mother struggled with mental illness, and his father, actor John Keredine, drifted in and out of the household. Young David bounced between schools and juvenile halls, struggling with authority and isolation. He masked his pain with rebellious behavior, developing early addictions to alcohol and later cocaine and heroin. Despite his breakout success with Kung Fu, Keredine's career was littered with erratic behavior, on-set outbursts, and self-destructive choices. He was arrested multiple times, most notably for burglary in 1960 and later for drug-related incidents. He earned a reputation as a nightmare to work with. He once stormed off a film set mid-production, leaving an entire cast and crew scrambling. In the 1980s, he was embroiled in a scandal after allegedly assaulting a woman during a drunken binge. The charges were eventually dropped, but the incident damaged his standing. He married 5 times, with each marriage ending in betrayal or emotional warfare. His son, Tom, later admitted they had long periods of estrangement. Keredine's darkest moment came not in life, but in death. On June 3, 2009, he was found hanging by a curtain cord in a Bangkok hotel closet, nude, with another cord tied around his genitals. Signs pointed to autoerotic asphyxiation. The death was ruled accidental, but whispers of foul play and a possible BDM connection lingered. He died at age 72, broke, disoriented, and alone in a foreign land. Despite once commanding hefty paychecks, Keredine had squandered most of his earnings on divorces, legal settlements, drugs, and extravagant living. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at just $500,000. Kay Luke was born on June 18, 1904, and portrayed Master Po in Kung Fu beginning in 1972, taking on the role at the age of 68. On screen, Master Po was the epitome of balance and enlightenment, a blind Shaolin priest who mentored the young monk Caine through riddles and proverbs. Audiences adored the character's calm wisdom and spiritual resonance. But Luke's real-life path to that quiet dignity was paved with frustration, racism, and painful concessions. Born in Guangzhou, China, and raised in Seattle, he grew up in a tight-knit but struggling immigrant family. His father died when Luke was a teenager, forcing him to drop out of college to support his mother and siblings. Early in Hollywood, he found work as a commercial illustrator, but acting remained his passion. He broke into film during the 1930s, but despite his talent and charisma, he was systematically denied lead roles because of his ethnicity. Luke was originally offered stereotypical roles, servants, laundrymen, and heavily accented side characters. He played Lee Chan, the #1 son in the Charlie Chan films. But the lead role of Chan was ironically given to white actor Warner Oland in Yellowface. The injustice was not lost on Luke, and though he never publicly protested, he expressed private disdain for the studio system's hypocrisy. His professional persona was one of restraint, but those who knew him described deep wounds beneath the surface. Bitterness at being overlooked, especially during the golden age of Hollywood, when his contemporaries skyrocketed to fame. Luke was known to be intensely private. He never had children and rarely spoke about his wife, Florence. Some speculated their marriage was more of a strategic union than a romantic one. But Luke kept personal matters closely guarded. Despite being one of the first Asian American actors to find consistent work in Hollywood, he was never offered a major starring vehicle. He reportedly turned down roles he felt were degrading, costing him financially, but preserving his dignity. Luke died on January 12, 1991, at age 86 after suffering a stroke in Whittier, California. He left behind a small estate valued at around $1 million, earned through decades of steady, underappreciated work in film, television, and voice acting. Richard Liu was born on October 1, 1903, in Maui, Hawaii, and began portraying Master Sun and Master Chen in Kung Fu, 1972, at the age of 69. On screen, he was the embodiment of discipline, stoic, philosophical, and unwavering, mirroring the austere tone of a Shaolin master. However, Richard's early life was marked by cultural dissonance. Raised in a Chinese-American family struggling to find footing in early 20th century Hawaii, Liu lost both parents by his teens and was sent to live with distant relatives in Los Angeles, where he was bullied mercilessly for his accent and appearance. He entered acting in the 1930s, but soon found himself trapped in roles depicting Japanese war villains, a painful irony given his anti-imperialist stance and American patriotism. During World War II, he willingly played sadistic Japanese officers to support U.S. propaganda efforts, but the roles earned him resentment from both Asian Americans and Japanese Americans, some of whom accused him of selling out his heritage. In the 1950s, he was nearly blacklisted after rumors of communist sympathy spread. False, but enough to destroy several career opportunities. A darker scandal followed in 1958 when his then-wife Bessie Liu, a prominent Hollywood agent, was accused of bribing producers to secure Richard better roles. Though no charges were filed, the controversy torpedoed his chances of leading a proposed NBC series. Richard was known in private circles for his temper and domineering behavior, even with family. His relationship with his daughter was strained, especially after she publicly criticized his career choices in a 1976 article. By the 1980s, Liu had grown bitter, feeling discarded by the very industry he once helped shape. He continued working in minor TV roles until a stroke slowed him down. On November 20th, 1983, he died in Los Angeles at the age of 80 from a cerebral hemorrhage. Though he had worked in over 120 films, Liu lived modestly, his wealth largely untallied. Experts estimate his estate was worth only $1 to $2 million at the time of death, mostly from property he quietly invested in during the 1940s and 50s. John Fujioka, born June 29, 1925, appeared in Kung Fu, 1973, at age 48 as both the humble cook and the sagely Xiang, two characters mirroring his own silent strength and inner complexity. But Fujioka's calm screen persona belied decades of private pain, masked by disciplined serenity. Born to Japanese immigrants in Hawaii during a time of intense anti-Asian sentiment, his early life was marked by poverty and systemic humiliation. Bullied for his accent and background, he retreated into classical literature and Eastern philosophy as shields. His Hollywood career bloomed in the shadows, typecast as Japanese soldiers, silent masters, or mysterious Orientals. He often accepted roles that pigeonholed his culture, yet brought them gravitas others couldn't. Behind closed doors, Fujioka bore the burden of a double life. As a gay man in mid-century America, he carefully curated a public image while maintaining a 40-year relationship with Gerald Lentes. Few knew of his deep involvement in underground LGBTQ+ theater in the 1960s, or that he once narrowly avoided arrest during a police raid on a gay bar in Santa Monica. His career was scandal-free but not without injustice. He was denied a major role in The Karate Kid because producers wanted someone less Japanese. Quietly spiritual, he immersed himself in Ikebana, Buddhism, and silent meditation retreats. He never married, never sought headlines, and never chased stardom. John Fujioka died peacefully on December 13, 2018, in Los Angeles, aged 93. At the time of his death, he owned a small Pasadena home, a collection of rare kimonos, and his life's work in film and stage. His net worth though unpublicized, was estimated under $500,000. His legacy, though subdued, lives on in the quiet dignity he brought to every role. Philip Ahn, born on March 29, 1905, took on the role of Master Khan in Kung Fu in 1972 at the age of 67. The character, cloaked in silence and stoic wisdom, served as the spiritual compass for Kwai Chang Caine, embodying serenity and balance in a violent world. To audiences, Master Khan was more than a mentor. He was a symbol of ancient truth in an America that barely understood Asian culture. But behind the calm, Ahn's life was marked by quiet torment. Born into a Korean independence activist family, his father was once imprisoned by Japanese authorities. As a child, Ahn grew up with the burden of political legacy, facing racial slurs and being alienated by both Korean and American communities. That inner conflict shaped a man who became adept at hiding his pain behind perfectly measured tones. Though Ahn broke ground as the first Korean-American film actor in Hollywood, his journey was far from triumphant. In an industry that exoticized or vilified Asian characters, he was repeatedly cast as the villain, a Japanese general, a Chinese spy, a sadistic torturer, roles he privately loathed but accepted to survive. During World War II, he received death threats from Americans who assumed he was Japanese, while also being condemned by some Korean nationalists who accused him of exploiting stereotypes. The most bitter chapter came when he was considered for a leading role in a major war film, but was dropped after white co-stars allegedly objected to being equal with an Asian actor. His personal life was cloaked in quiet solitude. Ahn never married, and rumors swirled that he had once been deeply in love with a white actress, but broke it off under pressure from studio heads who feared public backlash. Friends recalled his home being filled with books, old scripts, and a lonely piano. He reportedly battled insomnia and chronic pain in later years, worsened by a series of small strokes. He died on February 28, 1978, at age 72, after complications from surgery related to gastrointestinal issues. At the time of his death, Ahn's estate was valued at approximately $1.5 million, a mix of restaurant holdings, modest property investments, and residuals from syndication. Victor Sen Yung, born on October 18, 1915, in San Francisco, California, took on the dual roles of Tamo and Chu in Kung Fu, 1972, at the age of 57. These characters were spiritual and mysterious, each bringing quiet wisdom and subtle wit to the Shaolin universe. Audiences embraced Victor's performances as comforting, calm, and culturally resonant. Born into a working-class Chinese-American household, Victor faced racism early. His mother died when he was young, and he was often taunted for being too Chinese in a Western world and too Americanized among Chinese peers. He internalized this alienation, rarely opening up emotionally. Despite his breakout role as Hop Sing in Bonanza, Victor was typecast, often denied dramatic or romantic leads. In the 1960s, when he tried transitioning into film production, the studio system blocked him. He was seen as too ethnic to sell projects. His personal struggles intensified during the 1970s, especially after a failed business venture involving a cookbook titled The Great Wok Cookbook. Financial mismanagement and legal disputes over rights led to personal bankruptcy. In 1972, Victor was shot during the hijacking of Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 710. Though he survived, the bullet lodged in his back left chronic pain and paranoia. He withdrew from Hollywood, becoming obsessively reclusive, pouring his focus into ceramics and mail-order pottery. His private life remained a void. No spouse, no children, just stacks of unpaid bills and clay kilns. On November 1, 1980, Victor died alone at 65 in his North Hollywood home due to accidental gas poisoning, likely while curing pottery in an oven with a faulty line. His body lay undiscovered for over a week, a tragic image of isolation. Rumors quickly circulated, some speculated suicide, others foul play, but no official investigation followed. After his death, it was revealed that he had quietly amassed a fortune estimated between $5 and $10 million from Bonanza residuals, ceramic sales, and real estate investments. Tad Herino, born on August 14, 1921, in Seattle, Washington, stepped into the enigmatic world of Kung Fu in 1973, portraying minor yet memorable roles like Cowled Head and the Chemist at age 52. His characters, often cloaked in cryptic silence or scientific eccentricity, were the kind that flickered on screen briefly but lingered in memory. With an aura of quiet danger or knowing detachment, Herino could say more with a glance than most could in a monologue. But that subtle power never translated into fame. While the public remained unaware of his name, industry insiders whispered about the peculiar duality of a man who, despite having acted in over 100 films and TV shows, rarely smiled off set and often vanished immediately after his scenes wrapped. Beneath his calm professionalism, Tad harbored shadows. A Nisei Japanese-American, he spent several of his formative years interned at the Heart Mountain Relocation Center during World War II, a wound he never discussed publicly, but which silently defined him. The trauma of forced incarceration created a lifelong mistrust of authority, and colleagues described him as distant, unreachable, or intensely private. After the war, Herino tried to break into a Hollywood that viewed Asian faces only as caricatures or background. He was often cast as nameless waiters, voiceless assassins, or submissive elders, roles that chipped away at his pride. In his personal life, Tad remained a cipher. He never married, and rumors of a failed relationship with a married producer's daughter in the 50s were never confirmed. He had no children and no public family at his side. Some claimed he lived in the same small rent-controlled apartment in Koreatown for over 40 years, rarely letting anyone inside. In the mid-90s, he developed chronic heart problems, exacerbated by years of chain smoking and untreated stress. On October 3, 2002, he died of a heart attack in Los Angeles at the age of 81, alone and virtually forgotten. At the time of his death, Herino's net worth was estimated under $500,000, comprising a modest savings account, residual checks, and a handful of possessions. Leslie Nielsen, born on February 11, 1926 in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, took on the role of Vincent Corbino in Kung Fu, 1975, at the age of 49. Corbino was a menacing figure, smooth-talking, manipulative, and morally gray, standing in stark contrast to Nielsen's later comedic legacy. This role, though brief, showcased the darker dramatic chops he had honed before becoming a parody icon. Audiences who only knew him as the bumbling Frank Drebin were often shocked to see him in such a serious role, but it revealed a versatility masked by his later fame. Born into a harsh northern climate and raised under an abusive father who was a strict Mountie, Nielsen's childhood was defined by silence, both literally due to his early hearing loss and emotionally. He was bullied for wearing hearing aids, forcing him to develop a mask of humor and deflection that would later become his on-screen persona. His early Hollywood years were mired in failure. He was branded a wooden actor and dismissed from several major projects. In the 1960s, Nielsen's serious image faltered. He was passed over for leading roles and considered difficult to cast. His private life was also unstable. He married 4 times, each union ending in quiet devastation. One of his wives allegedly accused him of being emotionally absent and obsessed with controlling every aspect of his public image. Though never mired in scandal, he struggled with chronic loneliness and was said to have had long periods of depression masked by his on-set antics. His greatest professional failure came with the film Wrongfully Accused, 1998, which bombed critically and commercially, tarnishing his comedic streak. In his later years, Nielsen suffered the loss of close friends and endured worsening health. He died on November 28, 2010, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, from complications of pneumonia at age 84. Despite the emotional shadows of his past, Nielsen left behind a sizable estate. His net worth at the time was estimated at $20 million, including real estate in Florida and royalties from his prolific filmography. He is remembered for making people laugh, but few knew it was born from a place of pain. Benson Fong was born on October 10, 1916, in Sacramento, California, and joined Kung Fu 1972 at age 56. playing Han Fei and Li Yu, characters embodying calm wisdom and cultural heritage, often serving as moral anchors in the spiritual wanderings of Kwai Chung Kane. His portrayals deeply resonated with Asian American viewers starved for respectful representation. But Fong's life was less serene than his roles. The son of Chinese immigrants, he grew up in a time when anti-Asian prejudice was rampant. His father abandoned the family when Benson was only 8, and he spent much of his childhood working in restaurants to help his mother survive the Depression. Though he became a recognizable face in films like Charlie Chan and Flower Drum Song, he often faced typecasting and behind-the-scenes racism. In the 1950s, a casting director allegedly told him he was too Chinese for America, stalling his rise to stardom. Fong fought back not with lawsuits or protests, but by building an empire of his own. Fong's, a Chinese restaurant chain that became wildly successful in Southern California. Yet even success came at a price. He was sued by a former partner for alleged misappropriation of funds, though the case was eventually settled quietly. His marriage to Mylia Fong, though seen as stable publicly, was privately strained by his constant absences and rumored infidelities. One of their children battled addiction and distanced himself from the family, creating a rift Fong rarely spoke about. His biggest disappointment came in the late 70s, when he was overlooked for a major role in The Joy Luck Club, a film he believed would restore his dramatic standing. He died on August 1, 1987, from a stroke at age 70 in Los Angeles. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $1 to $2 million, primarily from his restaurant ventures and consistent, though modest, acting income. Despite a life spent playing dignified elders, Fong carried the weight of a Hollywood that never fully embraced him and a family legacy marked by both resilience and regret. John Keredine, born February 5, 1906, stepped into the dusty mysticism of Kung Fu in 1972 as Reverend Serenity Johnson at age 66. His character, half preacher, half prophet, was a whiskey-soaked oracle spouting cryptic wisdom with theatrical flair, equal parts spiritual and insane. It was a perfect mirror to the man himself. Keredine's gaunt frame and haunted eyes were Hollywood trademarks, but they also masked a far darker existence. Despite over 350 screen credits, he was rarely taken seriously by the elite. He often accepted roles in exploitation films, horror schlock, and bizarre Euro productions, some so humiliating he refused to see the final cut. Industry insiders whispered that Keredine's obsession with Shakespeare was more than artistic. It was a lifelong attempt to prove he was more than the mad scientist typecast that haunted his career. Behind the scenes, Keredine's life was a tangle of contradictions. In his youth, he was arrested for vagrancy and even lived as a street artist in New Orleans, where he claimed to have eaten paint to stave off hunger. He married 4 times, but none of his unions were stable. Infidelity, alcohol abuse, and financial ruin followed each one. His children, including future actors David, Keith, and Robert Keredine, described their father with both reverence and fear. Keredine was prone to terrifying rages and once abandoned his family for a year to tour with a failed stage production, returning only after creditors threatened repossession. He suffered for decades from crippling rheumatoid arthritis and reportedly turned to heavy morphine use in his later years, which affected his memory and speech during filming. By the time he died on November 27, 1988 at 82, in Milan, Italy, collapsing after attending a film festival. He was a relic of a forgotten era, broke in spirit if not in pocket. His net worth, estimated between $2 to $3 million, was deceptive. Much of it came from piecemeal roles and overseas royalties, and he had little control over his finances in his last years. His estate was reportedly mismanaged, with disputes among surviving family members. Ted Garing was born on April 6, 1929, and played the roles of Fuller and Cernicki in Kung Fu in 1974, starting at age 45. On screen, Garing embodied hard-nosed authority figures, men who were morally gray, often shaped by harsh environments. His roles in Kung Fu mirrored that grit, portraying characters who confronted Kane with suspicion or brute power. Yet off-screen, Ted Garing lived a life in quiet contrast to the roles he portrayed. Raised in the mining town of Bisbee, Arizona, Garing came from humble beginnings. His father was a copper miner, and young Ted grew up surrounded by economic hardship and small-town rigidity. A childhood filled with financial strain and emotional distance hardened him early. He escaped into theater as a means of emotional survival. Garing carved out a successful yet unsung path in Hollywood, appearing in over 175 film and television productions, but always as the other guy, the deputy, the foreman, the corporal. Despite this prolific career, fame eluded him, and bitterness occasionally crept into private conversations. He had a reputation for being temperamental during auditions, particularly when overlooked in favor of less experienced actors. Though he avoided Hollywood scandal, he carried private grief. His first marriage ended in divorce after an alleged affair with a co-star during the 1970s. A rumor neither confirmed nor denied. Friends recalled his struggle with undiagnosed PTSD, likely stemming from his military service during the Korean War, which he never discussed publicly. Garing found solace in charity work, particularly building homes with Habitat for Humanity, and later in teaching at the Pasadena Playhouse, where he was rumored to be unrelenting and harsh, perhaps projecting the rejection he endured in his career. He died on September 28, 2000, at age 71 in Steelville, Missouri, quietly and without much media attention. His estate, consisting of modest savings, a small rural property and pension funds, was estimated to be under $1 million. Soon Taek-oh, born June 29, 1932, in Mokpo, Korea, stepped into Kung Fu in 1973 as Chen Yi and Quan Chen at age 41. His roles radiated grace and control, always speaking with the calm weight of ancestral tradition. Yet the man behind the mask was far more revolutionary than reverent. Soon Taek-oh spent his entire life quietly resisting the machine of Hollywood whitewashing, often clashing with casting directors who tried to make him more Chinese or strip away his accent. Early in his career, he was blacklisted by a major network after walking off set when asked to perform in yellowface makeup. He later said in a rare interview, "I'd rather starve with dignity than bow with shame." For much of the 70s and 80s, that choice came with consequences. He was blackballed from several productions and forced to take roles beneath his skill set just to survive. His personal life, though outwardly calm, was also marked by solitude. Though he married once, he lived much of his later years alone in a small home near Koreatown, tending to bonsai trees and hosting underground theater workshops. Former students spoke of a man who was both exacting and enigmatic, often instructing with koans rather than critique. Privately, he struggled with bouts of depression, exacerbated by the feeling that his work in promoting Asian American representation went largely unnoticed by the mainstream. In the early 2000s, he began to show signs of Alzheimer's, but kept teaching until he could no longer remember his students' names. Soon Taek-oh died on April 4, 2018, at age 85 in Los Angeles after a long battle with the disease. His assets at the time included modest real estate holdings, savings, and intellectual property tied to East-West Players and the Society of Heritage Performers. His net worth was estimated at $1 to $2 million, most of which was donated posthumously to arts education foundations. Though he was never a household name, his legacy runs through every Asian American actor who ever dared to speak in their own voice. His life was not loud, but it shook the foundation of an industry built on silence. John Vernon, born February 24, 1932, took on the roles of General Cantrell and Forbes in Kung Fu, 1974, at age 42, bringing to life the stern, calculated menace of institutional power. His characters were chillingly effective, brilliant in how they wielded authority and exuded a quiet, oppressive control. Audiences often loved to hate him, and Hollywood eagerly typecast him as the smug dean, crooked cop, or ruthless bureaucrat. But beneath that trademark icy glare was a man far more conflicted than his crisp public image suggested. Vernon's childhood in Saskatchewan was grim. His father was a harsh disciplinarian, and John admitted later in life that he grew up afraid of every adult in the house. He escaped into theater, but even at Canada's National Theatre School, he was mocked for his thick accent and harsh demeanor. Though his stage training made him a respected actor, his rise in Hollywood wasn't easy. His cold persona alienated many directors, and behind the scenes, he had a reputation for controlling behavior, refusing to take direction from younger filmmakers, and reportedly threatening to walk off sets if dialogue was altered. His most humiliating career blow came in the mid-1980s, when he was replaced last minute in a high-profile legal drama due to rumors of clashes with producers and an on-set meltdown involving alcohol. Vernon's personal life was no less complicated. Divorced in the early 70s, his relationship with his children, especially actress Kate Vernon, was reportedly strained due to his emotional distance and long absences. While he was never embroiled in public scandals, whispers circulated about extramarital affairs, and an alleged paternity suit settled quietly in 1981. Vernon died on February 1, 2005, just shy of 72, from complications following heart surgery in Los Angeles. At the time of his death, he owned several properties in British Columbia and California, a voiceover studio, and vintage car memorabilia. His net worth estimated between $5 and $10 million. Tim McIntyre, born July 19, 1944, played Daniel Kane in Kung Fu, 1973, at age 29, a tortured, violent brother to Kwai Chang Caine. He also portrayed Deputy Mitchell, showcasing a grim, no-nonsense intensity. While his on-screen presence radiated quiet fire, McIntyre's off-screen life was a turbulent storm of contradiction and implosion. Raised by acclaimed actors John McIntyre and Jeanette Nolan, Tim was expected to shine. But behind the inherited fame was a boy crushed by pressure and childhood emotional neglect. His early years were filled with isolation in Montana, where he confessed to feeling unseen in a house full of stars. Though gifted in music and mimicry, he was haunted by failure. He lost out on major roles due to his reputation for being difficult, and during the late 70s, was blacklisted after an outburst on set involving threats against a producer and rumors of drug-fueled paranoia. His greatest professional embarrassment came in 1980, when he was cast as the lead in a Western series, only to be replaced after 2 episodes when executives found him too erratic. McIntyre's relationships were a carousel of instability. He married twice, both unions ending in restraining orders in public disputes, one involving allegations of domestic violence. He fathered a child he never acknowledged, resulting in a bitter legal battle. In his final years estranged from his family, he became a recluse in a cluttered LA apartment, battling congestive heart failure compounded by years of heroin and alcohol abuse. He died on April 15, 1986, alone at age 41. At his death, he left behind a modest collection of guitars, vinyl records, and rights to a few voiceover projects, his net worth estimated at just $750,000. His death prompted a quiet reevaluation of Hollywood's harsh treatment of unstable but gifted men. Albert Salami was born on March 11, 1927, and appeared in Kung Fu in 1972 as both Rafe and later Reuben Branch, beginning at age 45. His roles in the series were intense, nuanced, characters shaped by inner torment and philosophical contradictions. That same complexity echoed through Salami's real life, which would end in an unspeakable act of violence. Born in Brooklyn to Finnish immigrants, Albert was raised in a strict Lutheran household where emotional expression was suppressed. He served in the U.S. Army and later trained as a method actor at the prestigious Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg, gaining critical respect for his raw, deeply internal performances. Though he appeared in dozens of television shows, from Gunsmoke to The Twilight Zone, Salami was deeply disillusioned with Hollywood. He turned down a chance to star in Gunsmoke long-term, loathing the idea of being trapped in one role. While his craft was revered, his personal life was spiraling. He married actress Roberta Pollock Taper in the 1950s, and they had 2 daughters, but the marriage was volatile. By the late 80s, Roberta had filed for separation, citing emotional abuse, unpredictable mood swings, and an increasingly unhinged Albert. Behind the scenes, he had long battled clinical depression and alcoholism, illnesses he refused to treat. Friends spoke of Salami's obsession with control, his cold silences at home, and his growing paranoia. On April 22, 1990, when he was 63, tragedy erupted. After years of emotional unraveling, Albert shot Roberta dead in their Spokane, Washington home, then turned the gun on himself. The murder-suicide sent shockwaves through the acting community, forever tainting his legacy. Despite earlier achievements, his award-winning stage performances, his raw power on screen, his name became synonymous with tragedy. At the time of his death, Salami's net worth was estimated between $1 to $2 million, much of it tied up in property and investments. He left no note, only 2 grieving daughters and a body of work overshadowed by an act of irreversible destruction. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Kung Fu who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.